This video will highlight some of the less common techniques used to develop two of the components in the starter dataset. The first will focus on the grill. Fusion 360 has the ability to integrate 3D sketches. These sketches, though, are approached from a 2D perspective. As a quick example, I'll draw two line segments. I can even add a parametric dimension to one of them. And when I'm finished, I can use the Move Copy tool to grab a portion of the sketch and move it or rotate it. Here I'll grab an endpoint and move it simply up in the Z direction. You can even put in a precise value. I'll add 20. Then I'll use the Move Copy tool again to grab that same endpoint and move it in the X direction 20 millimeters. This has now taken that endpoint and moved my line segment up at 45 degrees off of the XY plane as well as the XZ plane. For the grill, you'll see that the bent portions drop down in parallel. To do this, we'll start with a flat sketch with the appropriate dimensions applied. We'll use the Move Copy tool, but we'll set a different location for the pivot. This will move the manipulator and allow us to rotate portions of the sketch 90 degrees. We'll repeat the same process for the other side. Rotating these sketch elements will limit some of the edits that can be applied. One of the tools that can still be used is the Fillet tool. We'll select a corner, make sure that it's set to 3 millimeters, and select all of the corners we'd like to apply 3 millimeter fillets to. We can still change the value, for example, changing the value for these last two corners from 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters. When this is complete, we'll add a construction plane along the path. We can place it anywhere on the path and it will remain normal to the point that we're placing it. For this model, we'll place it at the very end and then start a new sketch on this construction plane. Starting a circle, we'll base it on the endpoint of the path and set the value to 2.78, which is the diameter of a 12 gauge stainless steel wire. We'll then use the Sweep tool, selecting the circle as the profile and our 3D sketch as the path. This will create the 3D bent wire. The second item we'll focus on is the very top of the burner. This is meant to diffuse the flame, so it needs a complex shape at the edge. There are many different ways this shape could be defined. The workflow that I'd like to showcase will use a Loft tool along with a 3D sketch. I'll begin by showing that the layout is a simple 2D sketch, setting a portion of the circular shape. The second sketch is establishing the profile. By starting the Intersect Curves tool, we'll create a new sketch on a new plane, select the curved portion of the layout sketch, and then select segments of the profile sketch. This will project them into a 3D sketch shown in red. If we take a look at the top, you'll see it's taken on the curvature. When finished, we'll go to the Patch workspace. The Patch workspace allows us to work with surfaces. Here, I'll use the Loft tool, selecting an interior edge, and then selecting the segments of the projected 3D sketch. As the segments are selected, the loft will be generated. Taking a look at it from the side, you can see how the transition looks. The transition is a bit abrupt, so I'll change the transition style to a direction for the first profile and set an angle of 90. This makes a smoother transition, but I'd like to add a little weight to lengthen that transition out even farther. Now that transition is very smooth, and we'll duplicate the surface using a circular pattern. The angle that was established was 10 degrees, so we'll need 36 instances to create a complete circle. With all 36 instances in place, we'll use the Stitch tool in the Patch workspace to select them and make them one continuous surface. Now we'll use the Patch tool itself to fill in this space. This will create two individual surface bodies which again we can use the Stitch tool to combine. Once this is done, we have a single surface, but we need a solid model. We'll use the Thicken tool, either from the Patch workspace or in this case the Model workspace, to establish an offset value. We'll leave it at 0.3 millimeters, and this will create a solid model. I hope that you've enjoyed this insight into how to create some complex features using very simple workflows.